All right. We're back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Thanks for riding with us this morning. Boy, have we got some breaking news for you. And guess what? It's been hidden from you for just long enough that today is the last day for public comment in the Federal Treasonous Register for the federal Biosurveillance plan that will give anyone in the federal government access directly to your private medical records under the auspices of anything that they want to seek it for. National security purposes, public health, and everything falls underneath. I mean, they only need to throw out about 3 or 4 terms, and there's basically nothing that they can't cover underneath these auspices. They're piecing together a sweeping national biosurveillance system. And this system will give bureaucrats real-time access. Real-time. You leave the doctor's office, and because electronic medical records are now required under Obamacare, they will literally have instant access after you've left the office within 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes. An unelected, unaccountable bureaucrat, some pencil pusher, some person who's got devious ideas, some person who's selling your information to someone else so that they can obtain a credit card in your name. It'll all be an open book. Ladies and gentlemen, this is beyond the pale. With the stroke of a pen and a slight change in the Federal Register, there will be no discussion before your alleged representatives in Congress. There will be zero discussion from the Ministry of Propaganda. Why didn't you know about it until today, the May 21st, the last day for you to submit comments, public comment? Why is it that the Ministry of Propaganda has withheld this? Is this not major information? Does not every American want to know that the government will have direct access to their biosurveillance data in real time? Does Mrs. McGillicuddy want someone in Homeland Security or the HHS or the Department of the Interior looking at her records to determine, well, she wrote a blog post about us that we didn't like, so we're going to mention and spill it to through some nefarious means that she's had syphilis or she's had an abortion 20 years ago. Now she's writing an article about pro-life. And we're going to use it against her. That's what this is. This is an enemies list. I've been telling you that from Jump Street. The Obamacare system is nothing more than a massive database where every American is touched and completely, totally, abjectly controlled. Every aspect about you, your income, who you work for, where you go, where you came from, what you buy, all of it's being tracked. All of it's being monitored. Now your personal information, from every little bump and wart that you have, right down to every disease you've ever had, right down to all of the medical history that has ever existed about you, is all an open book to any pencil-neck geek, unelected, unaccountable, unnamed bureaucrat. Your entire life will now be laid wide open for any health worker, slave master, crony of the administration, and all of their affiliates. Friends, donors, benefactors, traitors, statists, elitists. Anyone who perceives you to be an enemy can peruse your medical information at will. In real time. Every cold, every sneeze, every pill you've ever taken, every consultation you have with your doctor, every private discussion you have. Laid open bare. And you are under biosurveillance. Biosurveillance. Not just your phone call, not your metadata, not your email, your physical body. all under the guise of national security. National security. How did your abortion or your syphilis or your gonorrhea or perhaps something else, perhaps your cancer, perhaps your esophageal GERD become national security material? How did the gout in your big toe become a concern? You see, here's the understanding that you need to have. The individuals that are associated with this can take this data, all your purchases, everything you bought, everything you own, everything you have, everything you've ever done, every person you've ever talked to, and they can take this information. And within, look, it doesn't even take a lot of special study. In fact, there's an article out there in Wired this morning that espionage in a post-privacy society by Katie Collins. She is talking to Richard Aldrich, who is speaking in Amsterdam. We are living in a transparent society, and it will be a bit like living in a nudist colony. He's a historian that specializes in espionage, and he's published a book about the GCHQ, which is the NSA Brit version. And he had a couple of very, very interesting quotes to say, but these organizations are becoming very cleverer than the CIA, cleverer than the KGB. And what he's talking about there is big intelligence gatherers, the airlines, the banks, the internet providers, Tesco, your doctor. And they have more information than the GCHQ and the NSA put together. You see, the truth is, you are at a stage where there is no privacy left. And because of the fact that you have no information that you can hold and maintain to yourself, and especially relating to your medical information, that information can and will be used against you. I mean, think of it this way. Who needs a drone strike on Americans when you find out that the person that is getting the most under your skin, let's call that Dinesh D'Souza, who was just pled guilty under the federal hammer that for a crime that has only been charged for decades and decades and decades as a civil fine, but he's just committed or agreed to a felony plea for the self-same thing. Why is that? I'm going to tell you why. Because the enemies list is already in full-blown play. Twyla Brace, I believe that's Brass Brace, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, a public health nurse and a co-founder of Citizens Council for Health Freedom. Here she says that and she has a link to the 52-page draft of the proposed National Health Security Strategy for 2015 through 2018. The deadline for comment is 5 p.m. today. Why has the Ministry of Propaganda been withholding this? Why doesn't Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, and NBC tell Mrs. McGillicuddy, who's watching Good Morning America, that her entire health record is going to be laid wide open for untold eyes to look at? Her x-rays, her photographs, her mammograms, her pap smear results? Are you kidding me? Who's got hemorrhoids and who doesn't? Why is that a matter for national security? Just listen for a couple minutes. Health situational awareness includes, this is a quote from their document. Health situational awareness includes biosurveillance and other health and non-health inputs, including lab diagnostics, lab results, health service utilization, active intelligence, and supply chain information, as well as systems and processes for effective communication among responders and critical health resource monitoring and allocation. What does that mean? That basically says there's nothing that's private and the world is their oyster, and that under the guise of oversight, they can pretty much get anything and do anything they want, and there isn't a damn thing you can do about it. Brace warns that the NHSS proposal would allow the federal government to monitor an individual's behavior before, during, and after any government-defined health incident, which could be anything from a local outbreak of the flu to a terrorist anthrax attack. Quote, "It's very broad," she says. "It doesn't seem to have any limits, except they say something about, properly protecting the data. But from our perspective, if the government gets access to this kind of data and is allowed to do research with the data, then our privacy has already been compromised. The government has already said that our data is their data for their purposes of national health security. It is very clear to us that really the government is moving toward real-time access, towards close collaboration of government and doctor for ready access to the electronic medical record and to conduct research and analysis. I don't think they ever mentioned the word merging, but this is a very close connection they want between public health, which is the government, and clinical health, which is your doctor's office and the hospital, for whatever diseases they choose to have reported. But it's not just diseases, ladies and gentlemen. It goes way beyond that. In fact, she goes on to say, in other words, anything and everything could become a health threat by the government standard. According to the draft proposal, NHSS will create, quote, health situational awareness by collecting, aggregating, and processing data from both traditional and non-traditional sources, such as social media, and from various governmental and non-governmental stakeholders. See, anytime you hear that word stakeholders, recognize that you're about to be bent over a barrel and hit really hard. Quote, decision makers will have the capability to visualize and manipulate data from many sources to create an operational picture suited to the specific situation and the decisions before them. Decision makers of whom? We didn't elect or account these people. They're not accountable to us. No one in the HHS takes an oath to the Constitution, ladies and gentlemen. No one. They're not law enforcement. They don't take an oath. Brace warns the government's biosurveillance plan is much more intrusive than the data collection currently being done by the Centers for Disease Control and Detection and Prevention. Quote, we're of the mind that the Fourth Amendment actually means something. So you can't access everybody's patient medical records just because you say there is a security threat or just because you say it's good for the American public, said Brace. But the fact of the matter is that the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which is HIPAA, already allows the government and the state government and the local government and anyone who is a public health agency to have access to your medical records, identifiable medical records, without your consent in any way, shape, or form. It is in the HIPAA privacy rule, which has the full force and effect of law. But that wasn't actually put in by Congress. It was put in by the Department of Health and Human Services, end quote. And it was done during the privacy regs changes regarding the economic stimulus in Obamacare. See, during the Obamacare creation, don't forget, it was a 2,000-page bill that became 25,000 pages worth of rules. And Congress doesn't have to vote on the rules. They're all written by bureaucrats, by the sycophants of this administration, by the people who are doing everything they can to write those rules to force us into a national government healthcare system, single payer, unified, just like Britain has. But here's the problem. They're also writing extraneous capabilities in there that Britain doesn't have. All of the surveillance and the monitoring and the biosurveillance, Britain doesn't have all that. Neither does Canada. So for those of you sycophants out there who say, nothing this president does is wrong, nothing. Let me tell you something. You ain't getting what you think you're getting. Brace points out that one of the dangers is the vast amount of medical data that is warehoused in these gigantic electronic databases. And it's only available to government-approved researchers. See, here's the problem. And you're going to hear this when I read this HIPAA stuff to you next. They say that they can use it for research purposes. But here's the point. This is just like the EPA. Well, we have empirical science to back up what we need. Okay, show it to us so we can peer review it. Nope. Nobody gets to see the great wizard's research know-how. Well, wait a minute. You're saying that you have empirical proof that we need to do this because of the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the blah, 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 and you've got all this empirical scientific proof. We'd like to have some independent scientists peer review it. Nope, you can't see it. But we're passing all these draconian rules about it that we can take away your property and rule that you can't pull the leaves out of a stream, and that, if you so much as pee out off the back deck after you've had a beer on a Friday night and you live 2 miles away from civilization in the woods, we can give you a felony for it. She goes on to point out, now it could be the entire electronic medical record, or it could be that they just have ready access to the electronic medical records because it's on a state health information exchange, for instance. And if they are one of the partners in the state health information exchange, they can start the data draw. So they can draw the data off anytime they want. And, by the way, it's also open to stakeholders. You know who stakeholders are? Well, let me tell you, for the environmental world, the stakeholders are the Sierra Club and all of these groups out there, these environmental extremists. Now, in this case, and it's the stakeholders are the same people who are doing these studies that show that, global warming is, we've got, 8 minutes left and the world is going to collapse by lunchtime and, all of this BS. So, and here's where she gets the point exactly right. She hits the nail right on the head. One of the things we look at is how research can be done in a way to push policies that we disagree with. They come up with findings that no one else can validate because nobody else has access to all of the data the way the government has, and no one can ever counter it. Now, let me explain to you how this works. For those of you that don't know, there's a game out there in the mattress industry. You didn't know that, did you? What does mattresses have to do with healthcare, Evans? Shut up. No, hear me out. You've all seen the mattress ad that says, if you can beat the price on our mattress, we'll give it to you for free. And it's a $600 or $1,000 mattress. Guess what? Here's how it works. The mattress chains go to CERTA, big name in mattresses, and they say, we want you to create a white label line for us of mattresses. And you put the CERTA label on it, and you call it the Princess Delight. Now, you can't sell the Princess Delight to anyone else. You're not allowed to sell it to any other company. You can't sell it to another chain. You can't sell it through Sears. You can't sell it through a catalog, and you can't even sell it on your own website. The Princess Delight belongs to Mattresses R Us. That branding. Then, now bear in mind that the Princess Delight, which they've just named the Princess Delight, is actually the one model that CERTA sells to everybody else as the princess, right? So you then walk in and you see the Princess Delight, and you call around and you keep trying to beat the price because you're trying to get a free mattress out of the deal. And their price is $8.99, and you call around and everybody says, well, we don't carry the Princess Delight. So you can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that anyone else, you can't say, hey, here's an ad for the Princess Delight. I found one, and they're selling it for $600. You owe me a free mattress. So you cannot possibly beat the deal. It's a scam. They reeled you in like a fish. Then you go back to the store, and they say, see, I told you couldn't beat our price. Well, what I saw, Serta Princess, no, that's a different mattress altogether. It is. The label is different, but the rest of it's the same. And here's the same argument they're going to do here. They have all access to the research. They completely own the research, and no one else is allowed to see it. The EPA is already doing it. So is the United Nations, and so is the entire climate change industry. And it is an industry. Mark my words and make no mistake about it. Climate change is a business. You see, here's the problem that you have. Government, at this point, has all the police power. They can capture and retain all this data and then use the data to produce propaganda and phony science. It may even, look, any statistician, any accountant can tell you that if you take a series of numbers, you can make it look like the company's doing better than it really is. Or take a group of statistics and you can make it look like if you're a pro-gun guy, that guns aren't a problem, and if you're an anti-gun guy, guns are the problem. You can take a statistical group of numbers and you can say, look, we need affirmative action in universities for this reason. Or if you're an anti-affirmative action person, you can take that same group of numbers and skew those numbers to show you a result that benefits your argument and position. That's the problem with statistics. Remember the old phrase, damn lies and statistics? Because they can be manipulated. So can numbers. That's why there are standards in accounting. Because every accountant knows, hey, I can get creative with these numbers and make it look like this company's doing a land sales business and everybody wants to invest, only to find out that it was all fraud and manipulation and that they're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. It's the same game here. I'm going to read it to you again because now that I've said that to you, I want you to understand the implications of what her statement was. One of the things we look at is how research can be done in a way to push policies that we disagree with. They come up with findings that nobody else can validate because nobody else has access to all that data the way the government has, and no one can ever counter it. According to the National Biosurveillance Science and Technology Roadmap, which was written last June at the behest of the president under an executive order, effectively, appropriately, and securely sharing health event data, including parts of electric patient records and laboratory data, has significant potential to improve national awareness of incidents that could progress to impact, here it comes, national security. Boom, shakalaka-laka. The magic word's been pulled out, baby. National security. We can justify anything under that. When we call national security, all things stop. Biosurveillance is defined by the NHS as the process of active data gathering and appropriate analysis and interpretation of biosphere data that might relate to disease activity and threats to human or animal health, whether infectious, toxic, metabolic, or otherwise. There's the gateway big enough to drive the state of Alaska through. And regardless of intentional or natural origin, in order to achieve early warning of health threats, early detection of health events, and overall situational awareness of disease activity. Extending electronic reporting of health information, including laboratory results, to public health serves as an example of rapidly communicating useful information. Useful for whom and under what circumstance, and for what end purpose. Routine, daily use of such capabilities may be leveraged to address critical requirements in the context of an emergency. That's a White House document. When we come back, I'm going to blow your doors off. HIPAA, what you thought was protecting you, has betrayed you. You've been sold out. And every secret is laid bare. You are now naked and afraid. Email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. Give me feedback on this segment and episode, folks. We'll be right back.